So this morning we'll be talking about the discipline behind successful AI initiatives. So that's talking about the strategy and the governance and understanding how you're measuring success. This will be the first time that I am giving this presentation, so there may be a couple of bumps on the road. I'm going to present and start with two different visions of the future. One, which is, of course, we've heard a lot, and that's that AI will replace all knowledge work within the next 2 years. That's one option. And despite everyone agreeing that AI is going to change the world and there's so much value to be unlocked, we're having a lot of time trying to actually label and find and discover that actual value. So there's lots of people who are doing something and fewer people that really know what they're doing. And so in this conversation, we'll talk about the risks of adopting AI without having a strategy and believing that momentum itself is a strategy. We'll talk about a framework to be able to more intelligently move forward. We'll talk about where AI works best, some leading and lagging success indicators, and then we'll wrap up. It's only about a 6-minute presentation, so we won't go into a lot of detail. In fact, even this is probably pretty aggressive on... Move that. Oh, I made it worse. There we go. So, predictive models have been used since about the 17th century. All that means is if you give me one parameter, I can guess at what the other one is. The simplest example of this could be if I knew somebody's age, I can, within a degree of accuracy, suggest their height. If I'm looking at new automations, that's also not new. We've used software and various other processes to automate things since technology started. So what is new is by having generative AI on top of these technologies, it's easier for people to interface and create more complicated predictive models and more interactive automations. And so just a couple of definitions to set the table. With machine learning, you have a system that can learn from itself and learn from its own data. And I'll be talking specifically about a narrow artificial intelligence. So that means in a couple of use cases, it can perform at or near human capability. So not talking about a generative AI or something at some point in the future. This is all here today. And so the risks of adopting AI without any sort of a strategy, you have increased costs, you have increased cyber risks, you have missed opportunities. I know there's a lot of text on this slide for people in the back. Can you read any of this?
No.
Okay, so to summarize, for your increased costs, you have more tool sprawl, you have a lot of new technologies that increases your complexity, you have increased costs for infrastructure, whether they're cloud or virtual, you have token usage, and you have an increased cyber risk profile. So as you have new agents which are not just searching and summarizing, but now they're acting on your behalf. And so if you just have governance that is a couple of documents and you meet quarterly, that's actually not going to be an effective governance. You're maybe monitoring what's happening, but you're not able to interact, you're not able to interrupt, and once irrevocable decisions are being made, you've already canceled the policy, you've bought the premium, you've done what you need to, and all of that then increases your cyber risk profile for reasons we'll get to in a minute. And then you have more opportunities because you have something that somebody built which we don't know how to measure whether it's successful, it's not being used, it burns out your employees, it frustrates your customers. So all of these come by not understanding what it is that we're building, and more importantly, why we're building it. So in a strategy framework, and this loosely aligns with the NIST AI reporting framework, which is the only voluntary framework that exists in the United States to decide how we should do governance in AI. It's entirely voluntary. And current events, there's numerous cases where there have been issues, I'll just simplify that. There have been issues with loss, risk, trust. And so mentioned that there's NIST, there's also the EU AI Act, as well as the Singapore AI agent framework. All of these, again, are just voluntary. But largely, they talk about your strategy and governance. And I'm going to oversimplify this to say you should have some, which is different than a lot of companies that, again, are just using AI and don't know how much AI they're using. They think they're using 12 models. They might discover that they're actually paying for 30 or 40. If they don't know that they're using these tools, they can't properly monitor them. And there's some really fun horror stories that used to be in the realm of science fiction where you hired one agent, that agent hired a second agent, that second agent subcontracted some work out to a third agent, and all three of these agents are now talking to each other, but you only know of the first one. So consider the risks from that. And so some of this just goes into defining, well, what is it that you want to do, and be able to articulate that as a use case. And you're already further ahead than a lot of companies using AI. If you're able to choose which metrics you want to actually move, and you believe that you can actually affect those, again, you're a step in the right direction. And being able to organize your organization and change management goals around that strategy, again, puts your technology in alignment with your business objectives. So in governance, not every tool needs to be governed the same way. And so a brand new startup working with publicly available data has a very different risk profile than a company that is doing hospital transcriptions using controlled information. So again, basically you should have an inventory of what tools your company are using. And you can do that from a financial audit, from a network trafficking, or from a device perspective. In fact, you should probably do all three. And you should understand who owns these AI tools so that there is somebody who's accountable. One of the things that AI cannot do in any instance is take accountability for its decisions. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So setting up some actual infrastructure around your governance so that it's more than just passive meetings that happen once a quarter. And then success measures, and we'll come back to this as well, but not listed on this is lowering your costs. Because you may save payroll, but there will be other places where you spend more money in terms of infrastructure and so forth. So better measures would be selecting a leading and a lagging indicator for understanding where you're going to see movement in the near term, and then what are the business outcomes that you'd like to affect. So things around being able to have increased speed and accuracy for your decision making, understanding whether you're saving costs or improving revenue, looking to move your customer or employee metrics through NPS or eNPS scores, and of course your error rates. And fewer errors, happier customers, more money. So where would you consider AI additions to your workflows? At no point in this have I said you should go out buy a specific tool, because you should understand the tool and the process and the metrics that you're looking to affect, and then you can have a better conversation about whether those tools would be effective. So AI does well in repetitive tasks, which data entry, data classification, looking at information retrieval and summary, being able to do knowledge work assistance for coding completion or co-piloting. But AI will struggle with any place where you need to use emotional intelligence to make a decision which you'll be held accountable for, and you have limited information or you have unclear data. So working with unstructured data or anything where it requires an original thought, AI will struggle with. A great book on this, Dreyfus, What Machines Still Cannot Do. Thank you, Aidan, for that. And so again, your success measures on the leading side, are people using it? Is it actually reducing specific tasks that you can measure? Is that reducing the drudgery that your employees are having to endure? Is it increasing their output quality in a way that you can measure, or reducing the errors that you can observe, and giving you more business agility? So all of those you can see as you're working on the project before you release the product. And then on the business outcome side, you want to have improved decision speed, your increased revenue, your process cycle times, customer NPS, retention, employee NPS and retention. If you're doing this well and engaging with your constituents, all of these should rise, or at the very least, you should be aware of them. So if you're only motivating towards payroll reduction and saving money, but you're annoying your customers and you are having higher error rates, then again, this is aimed at the wrong benefit. So there are some measures like the MIT Iceberg Index, which look at the amount of payroll that could be automated using current AI practices. I think that's mischaracterizing the goal because you're losing out on all of these other opportunities. And at the same time, that's assuming that a payroll reduction won't give you additional infrastructure, training costs, operation costs, compliance costs, or anything relating to your security risk. So I think using AI and justifying it as a cost savings is missing the point of why we should be doing this. As an alternative perspective from where we started, if we are focused with why we're using AI, then it does consistently produce value. But if we are just experimenting, that's a very expensive hobby. So, thank you. I hope this was useful for you. A little bit more about myself. I'm currently enrolled at University of Pennsylvania Wharton School and studying AI governance. I'd like to work with more startups to help them develop strategies for the intelligent use of AI in their products. If you're working on a company and believe that that would be interesting and valuable to you, please follow me on LinkedIn. I also have a brief checklist with what we talked about earlier, and there's some links to the different AI frameworks internationally at the bottom left. So with that, thank you very much for your time and attention.
Start the question and answer period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Rob.
Steve, what do you see out there as
What's that? Oh, that's the microphone?
practical use cases for entrepreneurs and small businesses in the area in terms of applying AI? Do you have specific examples of how they're trying to use it or how they wish to use it to better their business?
I think there's within your workflow, so there's sort of the simpler example is relating to how can you do scheduling, how can you do automation within particular workflows, how can you do customer service or some of the other activities mentioned of what AI does well. There's also larger conversations around your whole business model. So if you're starting and ending the conversation with, we're doing it but with AI, that probably doesn't work as well. So you still have to have a good business case, and then because of using a more advanced predictive model, you're able to get better results faster. That's the going a little bit off your question, but I think that's a more interesting use case. There are some studies that say that you can get anywhere between 20 and a 40% reduction on task time using automations. There's hundreds of applets that you could use. So I guess maybe I should have answered your question with the question of there's two sections, one which is more of improving your existing workflow, and then a separate separate activity of people who are designing new companies around being able to do some of that other work better. Did you have a preference on one side or the other?
Well, I think our firm's capability is looking at using AI to grow revenue and identify new revenue sources, specifically around using AI to gather intelligence out there in the market in terms of our deal flow, our opportunities, who to put them in front of specifically that would like to see these specific opportunities. Because if we just go around the Hartford area and say, hey, who's interested, You may get one or two, maybe not, but if you intelligently look out there and target specific folks that want to partner, invest in, support a specific initiative because of some tie they have to a medical condition, for instance, or they're really passionate about something because someone in their family works in that industry, then we're more likely to have matches and more likely to create value for both parties. So intelligence gathering is something that we believe is going to allow us to magnify our impact and create new revenue opportunities. So we're looking at it that way.
Yes.
Increase at the top versus savings on cost.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we wouldn't be doing it, right? So,
Yeah.
Because there's only a few of us in the company. So I just want to throw that out there as an example of how we're seeing it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. With the ability to take in many different parameters, weigh them in a more complicated way than what a human can do, you can look at the vast amount of data that you have, do some matching, do some probabilistic, and will you end up with an output that's more accurate and quicker to get than just random chance of putting 1,000 people in a room, buying them drinks, and just seeing what happens? Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example of where machine learning and AI can look at that large data set. One of the things that was really surprising to me is the amount of time and effort that goes into cleaning your data to be able to have that conversation.
That's a big problem. Yeah.
And like 60 or 80% of these projects is cleaning your unstructured data so that you could find, if I knew that investor A had a family member with a particular health condition, yes, I could connect them to these startups that are affecting that condition. But somehow I have to be able to get that gem of information out of them and into my CRM so that it can then get to the AI model so it can be used in the processing. So the collection of that data is more complicated than the engine to process it. And that collection of data is either going to be something that you can scrape through like Clay Earth or some other tools, and that's one use case, or just emotional intelligence and talking to people. And I think for all the automations that we do, we still can't get away from ownership, emotional intelligence, professional judgment, and working with conflicting data sets, because you might have a rule that says go left and a separate rule that goes right, and then the end result is just a Waymo car that's just looking at a cop going backwards and forwards and doesn't know what to do because there's no instruction. So it's complicated. Yeah, great question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I have like thank you. So I have an agency for information on the dark side. I'm trying to scrape the internet for death to capture notaries who have transition. I get the data each day, but I find that it's compounded. And I'm struggling with getting it to only give me the new ones.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can sidebar with me on that?
Sure. Yeah, some of that is probably, I have a number of questions of how you're collecting it, and maybe you can dedupe that.
Okay.
And then that could give you a cleaner message to you. But yes, that sounds like a very solvable problem.
Perfect.
Yeah. Danny?
I didn't have a question too.
Go ahead.
Oh, I skipped over.
No, it's okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've been.
AI without you is also a really good idea.
It's the name of a good book.
Yeah. When Napster came out and LimeWire, everybody was rushing to download MP3s and get as much of that as they could, right? It was exciting. And then social media came out and networking, and everybody hopped on that. Right now, everyone's trying to buy a Mac Mini. You get OpenClaw, and there's a frenzy. Right. Oh my God, you gotta get it. You gotta jump in, this thing is amazing. There's a lot of hype. I've even seen investors create how-to videos for founders to start creating their own systems. It seems a little exciting. It's also very scary. And it could also feel like you're missing out if you're not in that sort of mix playing around with things. What's your perspective on that activity?
So I guess I look at the turn of the century when people were building their own aircraft. And it was exciting because I saw the Wright brothers do it and it looked fun. And then I've seen all these weird videos of contraptions that somebody's pushing down a runway and it just falls over. And that has a similar, I think the risk profile is similar in, well, let's just try AI and see what can happen. And it's about as fun, you know, me standing here saying, well, what about governance is about as much fun as the person sitting in the backseat of the car being like, you should put on a seatbelt. And most of the time, hopefully, you won't need it. But when you do, it'll suddenly become very important. And that's the same sort of, I think 2025, people were asking a question, can AI do it? Well, the answer is yes, AI can do it. The real question is, do you trust AI to be doing it? Do your customers trust you that AI is doing it? And can it do that safely and at scale? And so for all of the people who are prototyping on Lovable, that's great. And they can take that idea and they can bring it to a developer and they've, you know, jump-stepped 2 months or 3 months of development and a lot of startup costs, and that's great. What they shouldn't do is take that concept which they just thought of and push it directly into production and start processing protected information. They have no concept of version control, no concept of DevOps, they have no concept of cybersecurity, and if it all goes poorly, the AI will not have accountability in that. So ultimately, it still goes back to the product owner and the business owner on, if this goes poorly, how will we respond? And I think that part is missing from the conversation in terms of incident response, customer service, and customer trust. So AI can do it, but as a business owner, you have to decide whether AI should do it, and to what extent. Great question. Thank you. Yeah.
So, you know, I'm in love with this topic, obviously. An interesting series of studies have, discussed the dual process theories of decision making, the type 1 versus the type 2. Kahneman will call this system 1, system 2, but there's a big debate within the geeks as to that system 1, system 2, that sequential process doesn't really fit as well as maybe a multifunctional type 1 and type 2, or each of them are multifunctional. So, what's on the right-hand column where AI struggles with is the decision of what to do because it has no motivation. It itself has no true motivation yet. For me, I'll say, right? Actually, for me, what I'm looking at AI in the industry is as a disruptor, just for what you said. You know, I'm looking at big companies that are all going to collapse because there's a capability now that you can attack their market share at a fraction of the cost without any of the baggage, learning from all their 15 to 20 years of mistakes. So if I'm a big company, I'm thinking in terms of, you know, what does this mean for my business continuity, right? Because especially if you can leapfrog in 3-4 months, build an entire system that takes out, let's say, the ride-share industry. Or let's say that it takes out a better Airbnb, or anything that upset the traditional stuff can now be upset. And I mean, Meta, for example, their advertising revenue went up by $30 billion in 1 year. That's all pure profit. There's no cost there. So I'm looking at it from a creative destruction perspective. I think that's inevitable, and that's the biggest question mark I have for the economy. Where is this all going?
Well, I guess I hear that. Alternative perspective, there are currently more than 70,000 jobs in the state of Connecticut paying more than $100,000 that are unfilled. So in the future, will there be disruption and payroll changes because of AI? Absolutely. Taking this further, there's also an interest in the VC community for, well, can we get a one-person unicorn? And it's like, well, maybe, but regardless of whether that could exist for a moment, is that sustainable? Absolutely not. Because that person's going to need to go to sleep, and who's going to do customer service when they're sleeping? And how do you manage? Like, yes, you can build a customer service. I'm going to take this into more of a science fiction kind of a realm of, could you eliminate your entire IT and customer service departments and have AI do all of that? You could. Is that good for customer service? Probably not. If I'm a customer and I want to call in and I just want to press 0 and talk to an agent, and you're a one-person startup company worth $1 billion, you don't have time to talk to me. And if you don't have time to talk to me, do I want you to be my bank? Probably not. So like, AI can do it. The question is, do I trust AI to do it, or do I trust a company that trusts AI to do it? And so there's a case that I was reading of somebody going into their medical provider, and they were to sign a document authorizing AI medical transcriptions. And the person said, well, but what AI model are you using? And the person in the doctor's office just said, I don't know, it's AI. And they said, no, that's not the answer. Who's doing it? And they said, I don't know, sign it, it's AI. And they said, no, 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 no. You have to be able to tell me what provider you're, like, who am I trusting you to trust? And if you don't know the answer, why should I trust you? And I think there's going to be a lot more things like that where there's analogies to older technology, but they feel weird. Like if I were to buy an agent, and I'm going to equate this to a piece of capital equipment, like if I bought a forklift and I was having it drive around the warehouse, okay, that sounds fine. But I'm also going to have some deterministic rules to say that the forklift is going to stay in the warehouse and it's not going to suddenly start going through HR. But if you haven't created these rules to prevent your agents from going into data that they shouldn't and exfiltrating data that they shouldn't have access to, like, what stops them? Meh, Nisreen?
And I would say the same argument, like, do we need AI? Or, like, is this a problem we need to solve with AI? So I'll say one use case that we're seeing right now, and I would love to hear your opinion about 6 months from now. Would we still hold this statement true? Because one of the things that in AI and building this intelligence, one of the core things the industry and all these companies have been focused on is AI coding.
Mm-hmm.
We're using AI to code. At this stage, it's brilliant. As an engineer of 30 years, it does all the work that I needed to do. I have to put some guardrails and other things. Now, we're starting to move that into a lot of other industries.
Mm-hmm.
So the question of whether AI can do it or not is becoming like non-existent. In 6 months, that's gonna be changing across different industries. So it becomes, yeah, what AI model are you using? Because if you've looked at the charts this week or this weekend, OpenAI is tanking and Claude is going up. Like, these charts are reversed. We've seen that with browsers in the past.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen companies and community work 10. For example, a lot of engineers used to use something called Stack Overflow. Zero traffic to that website, because why would I go to Stack Overflow and filter through it when AI can do that for me? And so AI is here to stay and is changing very quickly in a lot of industries.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you adjust that statement 6 months from now?
Which statement?
The statement whether do we use AI?
Well, I think, yeah, I'm going to go back to a question or a point that you made earlier of, should AI be used for this process? And the same question is, was the process good to begin with? And, if you automate a process which doesn't really work, you'll end up with a larger pile of stuff that you didn't really want. So automating a functional process with good data, that's key. To your question around technology moving and different browsers or different models, it's an exciting time to be in technology. And in terms of how does, sorry, it's a complicated question.
It is because we're facing a time where things change exponentially. Like you wake up one day and things are drastically different than what they had last week, right? And these companies are quickly changing the way the field is going. And to a previous point, like what it did is democratize building software. So like we have people building through Lovable, Versatile, all of it, and pushing code online or using Apple Box and all of that, people building their own servers. So I think there's a place where we're democratizing the software and we're democratizing business. And at the same time, we're not sure where and how that is changing our workforce.
I agree with that. I push back a little bit on the people that go too far into a good thing and say, and therefore we don't need coders, IT departments, lawyers. Once we have AI doctors, we just don't need doctors. And it's like, no. That's too far. Because you still need, AI could build the code. And yes, AI could push that code into production. But somebody needs to understand like how you're going to do a branching strategy, how you're going to do, are you going to use Git and how would you use that? How do you do more complicated actions? And some of these things are just too steep to learn every single time. Again, going back to a one-person founder. Yeah, they could learn all about ITIL and good technology discipline, but that's not their core competency. So they shouldn't bother with that. You're going to need, the shape of your IT department will change, but I don't think it ever goes away.
So then, last question.
Last question.
So then would you say that, based on a democratization of coding, would you say that businesses of the future are going to be more purely, businesses of the future that can survive are going to be the ones that are more purely tethered to the social fabric, the inherent human need? So arguably big companies produce things that we don't necessarily need, but they produce them because they're the first mover and they're in that space and they've created a competitive advantage and nobody's going to encroach. Well, now we have a situation where you can encroach and redefine it based on what society really truly needs. So perhaps we're converging to that point, and maybe it's a matter of, it's just interesting. And it seems like a lot of companies are going to fall apart. Probably, and yeah, unknown as to who's going to win and lose some of this.
Just a comment, maybe question, real quick. Appreciate it. Just hearing all this, I'm wondering, Steve, in your opinion, to take a step back, it seems like there's a lot of industry, a lot of companies, a lot of people that are still struggling and slowly trying to adopt AI and use it to their advantage. It could take time for all those benefits to flow through the economy, right?
Definitely.
As you mentioned, Claude, these new flavor of the day come out of nowhere and take over. Is there a concern of diminishing returns for this innovation, AI innovation, or is it at some point just going to be so impactful? Only because the regular economy, humans just can't adopt it quick enough.
I think there's
exponentially increase innovation.
Yeah, I think there's one of the major risks I see is the increase of wealth disparity between the people who have and the people who don't, and the people who have access to technology and broadband and education to be able to take advantage of these opportunities versus people who don't, and that's a real thing. There's another concern of why is it with the promise of AI, AI was supposed to automate the things that I didn't want to do so that I could live a better life and do the jobs that I wanted to do. And what we're finding is that AI seems to be really good at doing the jobs that people want to do, and all that's left over is the drudgery that I didn't want to do to begin with.
I'm going to disagree with that. I think that is actually to the points that we were just making. I think that's going to have a diminishing return on it.
Yeah.
Like, AI creating art or AI creating movies and all of that stuff. I think it's a bit of a hype, and people are just driven to it because it's like exciting and new. But when we go back, there's like a new chart that's circulating recently of like the number of people that are actually using AI productively versus in the general population. And those people like in this room are probably in the small percentage of people that are actually using AI for what we want. So there is a lot of hype, and I think once that hype and this party ends, we're going to see it plateau a little bit before we get to the next level of what AI is going to become. Because the way we're building AI right now, with a focus on generic data, is not going. It's going to cap at some point, and we have to shift perspective from engineering to think about it for more specialized, which a lot of companies are starting to look at it this way. But also, in order for us to reach that level of intelligence, there's a lot of work that we need to do. But those main companies that are building AI right now, they're building it based on data and big warehouses of data that they're trying to capture our attention. So we're changing the ad industry in a different way. And there's a hype and there's fear mongering and all of that stuff, but this year we're going to see a few shifts. We're seeing a shift in engineering jobs. We're seeing more engineering job openings because people are realizing where we need engineers and how we are engineers. Back to your point, not, just lovable is not going to get you there. The number of people that I had to work with and save their tokens and their credit cards because their API keys are, front end is sad.
Yes.
So I think we're going to have a few changes, and there's this tendency for utopia versus dystopia, and I'm going to lean on the utopia because people are using it, people are engaged with it. We've had a great increase of 52% of the US general population that is starting to use AI more productively. That is a huge increase from last year. So things are changing.
Yeah.
Respect people's time. This is a great conversation, and I really appreciate Steve kicking it off. I think we're going to have a lot of these kind of conversations going forward.
And to
Do you
that,
have a final point you want to make?
well, I guess just encouraging folks to present. This is not a startup company. I mean, it's an interesting topic. It's something that I obviously would like to work with companies on, but trying to expand the focus and what can be discussed in 1 million cups. So great conversation. Thank you all for your feedback.